We're in Book 6, Bible Story by Arthur S Maxwell. Hey! Okay. We are in part 2. Let me get you a little closer. I know, like you really want to see up the nose. Okay. Part 2, Story 3, Songs and Tears. Slowly the great caravan made its way from Babylon to Palestine. 50,000 people, with all those camels, horses, mules, and donkeys, could not have moved very fast. But what did they care? They were free. They were going home. The last years, the long years of captivity were over at last. No wonder they sang and should and shouted for joy. Sorry guys for my horrible reading. I never was real good at reading out loud much, but I've been doing it for so long, so let's get going. Get back. Just which route they took, we're not told, but it could well have been the same that Abraham followed when he left Ur of the Chaldeans nearly 1,500 years before. 1,500 years before. Breaking it down for y'all, babies. Sorry. I'm thinking. Okay. At sunset each evening, as the families gathered around the campfires, no doubt fathers and mothers told their children the story of that far-off day and of all that happened since. Of Aaron's sons, Abraham's sons, Isaac of Esau and Jacob, of Jacob 12 sons who had become the fathers of the 12 tribes of Israel, of the journey into Egypt and the long years of bondage there, of the great deliverance under Moses, of God's mighty miracle at the Red Sea, and his many wonders in the wilderness, of the crossing of the Jordan and the conquest of the promised land, of the glorious reigns of David and Solomon, of the years of wrongdoing and the final punishment. And when these wonderful bedtime stories were ended, I can hear the parents saying, "And now God in his goodness and love is giving us another chance. That that's the way that is why we are going back. We must not fail him this time." As the days followed day, excitement grew. Memories of life in Babylon faded as the beloved homeland drew nearer and nearer. At last, a great shout of joy went up when from those in the lead, they had sighted the mountains of Judah. Back through the whole long procession spread the glad tidings. The singers burst forth with new song of praise, while many of the weary pilgrims found new strength to finish the journey. "Are we near there?" I could hear some tired little boy asking his mother. "Yes, dear, nearly there," she said. "Only a little way more." Then it has a nice 2-page illustration down at the bottom. And yes, it's the way it is. It's the book. It's not my camera. And some of you will say, "Oh, it's fidgety." No, it's the way the book is. It got printed offset. I think I got a set of books that, got offset printing. Or printing and it's not perfect. But that's a 2-page illustration down at the bottom. Okay, let's get back to the story. Then came the greatest shout of all. Jerusalem, Jerusalem. They were home at last, but it was a sad sight that met their gaze. Where the great wall had once stood, nothing was left but scattered stones, as far as the eye could see. Pretty much about what it is now. Solomon's beautiful temple was a heap of charred ruins. So, too, was the royal palace and all the fine homes and stores that some of the returning captives remembered so well. All were gone. Only a few poor houses remained. So this was Jerusalem. The children and the young people who have never seen it before must have been very disappointed. Some may some may well have said, "Imagine coming such a long way to this." Of course, the dreadful ruins were no surprise to the two leaders, Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest. They knew all along what they would find, and now the very first thing they set to work to rebuild the altar that had once stood in the temple court. This done, they offered burnt offerings upon it, and the first so offered in many years, or many years, too many. I suppose the whole 50,000, 50,000 men, women, and children crowded as near as they could to take part of that first service of thanksgiving to their return. They stood on parts of broken columns, smashed arch, upturned stones, anywhere. They just so they could get close enough to see and hear what was going on. And as the smoke of the sacrifice rose into the evening sky, all heads bowed in thankfulness to God for delivering them from Babylon and bringing them safely home again. In the days that followed, the people scattered over the countryside looked for good. Okay, the people scattered over the countryside looking for good farmland and places where they could build their homes. Meanwhile, Zerubbabel sent messengers to Tyre and Sidon, Sidon, to buy cedar trees, which were to be sent by sea to Joppa for the rebuilding of the temple. And at the same time, he ordered stone masons to begin clearing the site. And they didn't have bulldozers and stuff. They just had to pick it up by themselves. They may have had shovels and wheelbarrows, but they had to pick it up by themselves. I mean, we got this old school is being torn down, and there's tractor trailers and all kinds of stuff there. But they didn't have it. Okay, I digress. Let me get back to the story. It wasn't easy to get started, especially as the whole city had lain in ruins for the best part of 70 years. But so well did everybody work within 7 months, Zerubbabel was ready to lay the foundations of the new building. And it's got a picture here of some kids climbing up a ruin. That's the illustration. Okay. Let's see what it is. Okay, got more. had 2 pages together. What a ceremony that was! Once more the people crowded around. Priests and the Levites, all dressed in their robes, came with trumpets and cymbals, and they sang together by chorus in praise and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercies endureth forever towards Israel. How happy they were! And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. Then a strange thing happened. In the midst of the singing, a sound of wailing was heard. While all the young people were shouting for joy, all the old people were crying out loud, with tears running down their cheeks, so that the people could not discern the noise of shouting for joy or the noise for the weeping. And I guess this is condensed from the King James because it's got the 3 dots. For the people shouted with a great shout, and the noise was heard afar off. The trouble was, of course, that the old men, the chief of the fathers, who were ancient men, remembered the old days and the glory of Solomon's temple, and this one seemed so small, so poor by comparison. So they wept, and the songs and tears were mingled on this day of the new beginning. And then it has an illustration down at the bottom that some people that they're singing for joy, and some people looking very sorrowful. There's illustration. It could be an eye. It's not signed on it. And like I've been saying on most of these, I wonder where the originals are. About 70 years ago. Okay, that was the end of part 2, story 3. So guess what? It's break time. So I'm gonna break before I go back to the next stories, and I'll see you in a minute.